One of the biggest misconceptions about bullying is the idea that every bully is secretly hurting inside, that every person who tears others down must be carrying some deep emotional wound that explains it all. You hear it constantly. People say things like, hurt people, as if that statement alone fully explains why someone chooses to humiliate, intimidate, or break another person down. While there are situations where pain plays a role, that belief has been repeated so often that it has become a blanket excuse instead of a thoughtful explanation. It softens the reality of bullying in a way that removes accountability, and that is where the problem begins. The truth is more complex, and it is not always comfortable. Not every bully is acting from pain. Not every bully is struggling internally. Some are, but many are not. Bullying is not caused by one single factor. It is shaped by environment, reinforced by social dynamics, influenced by psychological and even biological factors, and ultimately carried out through personal choice. If we actually want to understand it and stop it, we have to look at all of those pieces honestly, without turning them into excuses. For many, bullying begins with what they are exposed to early in life. When someone grows up in an environment where aggression is normal, where respect is not modeled, and where control is gained through dominance or intimidation, those behaviors can become internalized. It starts to feel normal. In some cases, it even feels necessary. That does not automatically make someone a bully, but it creates a foundation where harmful behavior feels justified. There are also environments where emotional expression is limited or shut down entirely. In those situations, frustration, insecurity, and anger have nowhere healthy to go. Those emotions build over time, and when they finally come out, they often come out in destructive ways. For some, that becomes aggression toward others. For others, it becomes a need to control people or situations to avoid feeling vulnerable. That can turn into bullying, not always out of cruelty, but out of a lack of emotional tools. Even then, that explanation adds context, not permission. Another major factor is the absence of accountability. When harmful behavior is ignored, minimized, or defended, it does not fade away. It grows. If someone learns that they can embarrass or intimidate others without consequences, they begin to believe there is no real cost to their actions. Over time, that behavior becomes more frequent, more intense, and more ingrained. It shifts from something they do to part of who they are. Social reinforcement plays a role as well. Bullying often gains power from the reaction of others. When people laugh, stay silent, or avoid stepping in, it sends a message that the behavior is working. It brings attention. It creates a sense of control. In certain environments, that attention becomes something people chase, and bullying becomes a tool to get it. There are also cases where trauma and emotional struggles play a role. Some people project what they are dealing with onto others because they do not know how to process it. They may carry anger or insecurity that they redirect outward. That is real, and it matters. But it is also where people go too far in making excuses. Pain may explain behavior, but it does not make it acceptable. There are many people who go through difficult experiences and still choose not to hurt others. There are also biological and psychological factors that can influence behavior. Some individuals struggle with impulse control, emotional regulation, or empathy due to how their brain processes information. These factors can increase the likelihood of aggressive behavior if they are not addressed. But again, they do not remove responsibility. They highlight the need for guidance, structure, and intervention. Even with all of these influences, there is one part that cannot be ignored, and that is choice. At some point, bullying is a decision to say something harmful, a decision to embarrass someone, a decision to use power in a way that causes damage. People often avoid this part because it forces accountability, but without it, nothing changes. One of the hardest parts of addressing bullying is approaching the parent of a child who is responsible for that behavior. Most parents do not want to believe their child is capable of causing harm. That reaction is natural, but it can also prevent real change. When a parent becomes defensive or dismissive, the focus shifts away from the behavior and onto protecting an image. And when that happens, the child learns that accountability can be avoided. That is why the approach matters. The focus should stay on the behavior and its impact, not on attacking the child or the parent. Clear examples, patterns, and honest communication help shift the conversation from opinion to reality. It is also important to give parents space to process what they are hearing, because initial reactions are often emotional, not rational. But that space cannot turn into avoidance. The conversation has to continue until there is acknowledgement, not just dismissal. Helping a parent get through to their child takes more than one conversation. It takes consistency, follow-through, and a willingness to address the issue even when it is uncomfortable or inconvenient. It requires parents to be present, to pay attention to patterns of behavior, and to step in early instead of waiting for things to escalate. It may involve setting firm consequences, limiting certain freedoms, or creating more structure in the child's environment. And in some cases, it means reaching out for outside help, whether that is counseling, school intervention, or other forms of support. At the same time, parents have to go beyond discipline and focus on teaching. A child needs to understand not just that their behavior is wrong, but why it is wrong and how it affects others. They need to learn what respect actually looks like in action, not just in words. Without that understanding, consequences alone will not create lasting change. They will only create temporary compliance. And when those efforts are ignored or resisted, accountability has to go further. There comes a point where protecting others has to take priority. Allowing the behavior to continue unchecked sends a message not just to the child, but to everyone around them, that harm will be tolerated. That is a message that cannot be allowed to stand. A personal message to the bully. To the person who is engaging in bullying behavior, I want to say this a little differently. I don't know what you're dealing with behind closed doors. I don't know what your life looks like when no one else is around. There may be things you're carrying that other people don't see, things that are frustrating, confusing, or even painful. And if that's true, that matters. But what you choose to do with that matters too. Taking it out on someone else, putting someone down, making someone feel small, that does not fix anything. It may feel like control in the moment, but it does not solve what's underneath. It just shifts that weight onto someone else. And over time, that behavior shapes you. It becomes a habit, then a pattern, then part of who you are. But you are not stuck being that person. Even if this is what you've learned or what you've been doing for a long time, there is still time to change. You can make a different choice. You can take a different direction. Real strength is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. It is about recognizing when you are wrong and choosing to do better, even when it is uncomfortable. You don't lose anything by changing. You gain something real. Respect that is not built on fear, and a sense of self that is not dependent on tearing someone else down. I may not understand everything you're going through, but I do know this. It does not have to define you. What you do next does. So I'm going to leave you with this. If we truly want to address bullying, we have to stop simplifying it. It is not just pain. It is not just environment. It is not just biology. It is a combination of influences, but it is sustained by lack of accountability. Real change requires more than awareness. It requires action. It requires people to step in, to speak up, and to stop making excuses for behavior that causes harm. It requires parents to stay engaged even when it is difficult, educators to enforce standards even when it is uncomfortable, and communities to refuse to normalize behavior that damages others. Because ignoring it does not make it disappear. It allows it to grow. The goal is not just to stop a moment. The goal is to break a pattern before it becomes permanent. And that only happens when people are willing to be consistent, to follow through, and to make it clear that respect is not optional. Because when bullying is left unchecked, it does not stay contained. It spreads into relationships, into environments, and into the way people treat each other long-term. It becomes part of someone's identity if it is never challenged. So if we want something different, we have to do something different. We have to stop excusing it, stop minimizing it, and start addressing it for what it is. Not just a phase, but a behavior that, if left unchallenged, becomes a lifelong pattern. Thank you for listening. Until next time.